Well, we'll give it a shot. First things first.
You should ask for a request.
Whoa!
Hey, Larry Goodwin,
Well,
champion.
it goes to the Salem K1.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a scratch K1.
By a point. And then I think, I don't have the results in front of me, but I think it was like, you and Britt had about the low 20s, 21, 22. And like the third place guy had like 50 points or something. Or maybe it was 40. But
That wouldn't have been the same if it wasn't, if Fotis and Brian had lost their race.
Yeah, the big shot.
Right. There was a lot of good sailors there.
yeah. All right.
All right,
Thanks,
so
John, for hosting this while we're
as Will asked me to do this week, and coming off that regatta last week, I thought of one topic that I thought was most important, that I thought people were making the biggest mistakes on, both in our Frostbite fleet, but I think this is in general, and it's maybe more important in Dyers than in other boats. The biggest place this is a problem is at the windward mark. So in general, at the windward mark, there are boats coming in on starboard, and Jonathan's coming in on port. Or whoever. Like, and last week there was a couple of races where there was big lefties at the top, and this was actually a decent place to be, right? And people would come. It's a great place because you've got, especially if you're towards the front of the fleet, you've got some nice clear air. You're not stacked up here, so maybe you took a late tack and are coming in here. Now, the problem with this, so this boat doesn't have a lot of rights. Okay, we all know that. It's not the greatest place to be, especially if you're going to be within 2 boat lengths. But even if you're outside 2 boat lengths, it's just going to be a hard place to be for this boat. What happens, I think, too often is the starboard tack boats are very keen on asserting their right of way and not thinking about that this is a race. Okay? But the fact is this is a race, and it's a fleet race. So when there's 10 boats or 20 boats, the goal of the starboard tack boat isn't to beat the blue boat, right? It's to get around the race course as fast as possible, especially if you're not winning and there's a red boat already at the mark, or 2 or 3 or 4 red boats are, boats already around the mark, and you're towards the middle of the fleet. This is even more important. But it's even important if you're in first and second. So green boat's on the ley line. Blue boat is not going to cross. In fact, probably going to hit bow to bow. Okay? The green boat has another boat directly behind her. So what you're going to do, and what generally happens, is the green boat starts screaming at the blue boat, starboard, 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 don't tack, don't tack, don't tack. What generally happens is the blue boat tacks. Almost every time. They don't want to duck 2 boats, so they're going to try. So they try to tack in front of you. Almost every time. And what happens?
They start pitching.
They start pinching, and they say, and then you overlap them outside, and you say, well, you can't bring me above close hauled. And they say, I'm not. And maybe they make the mark, and you don't really go above close hauled, but you are pinching, and you're slow, and all the boats behind you have really, they've caught right up. So you round the mark in this really tight, area. You've definitely, everyone who's around is further down the course than you are already, right? So the alternative to this, and the preferable thing to do, say you're back here, you're on the ley line, and you're in the same situation, when they're about 2 or 3 boat lengths away from you, just tell them to cross. Cross, 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 really loudly. Cross, you got it, cross, cross, cross. So even if you have to bear off, one thing you can do is just slow down a little bit. But if you have to bear off, right, you bear off, you go down here, you duck them, they cross you, and they're going to attack, right? As soon as they get across you, they're going to be like, he's making the mark, so I'm going to attack, right? You've accelerated, so you've pulled away from the green boat behind you. He tacks right on you. Whose wind does he tack on? Everybody that's behind you. Who gets to the mark first? The green boat. What happens? You've gained the entire length. This guy's going to attack. He's going to be slow. You've pulled away from him. You've pulled away from the boats behind you. He's going to slow everyone around. You're going to get around much closer to the boats in front of you and with a gap behind you. Way, way, way better. every single time. And this happens like at the winter mark all the time. So that's probably the biggest thing that I think that happens, that's a big change at the winter mark every time is, who's the boat that's deciding to let the guy cross and go. So as long as you think you can duck and still make the mark, there's almost never a reason to force the person to tack. And so generally, if I'm on starboard tack, coming, put the boats back in place, one of the things I'll almost always do is I'll aim slightly below the mark as they're coming to me. And I'll yell cross, and I'll make it look like I'm not making it, or going behind them and going for speed early, and yell cross, cross, cross. More speed makes them want to go across you. It makes you want them to go across you by a little bit extra. And as soon as you get behind them, you can head up. You get that more speed, which you can then translate into making sure that you make the mark. And then it puts them further behind you after they tack. So that's probably the number one thing that would, I think, solve a lot of our jam-ups at the winter mark, but it also makes sure that the boats that were ahead, because in theory, right, the green boat should be, they got to the right, even though they're bow to bow, the green boat should be ahead of the blue boat coming into the mark. If you let the boat tack to leeward and ahead of you, between you and the mark, they're ahead of you, and that's not what you want, right? Like, you got to the right, take advantage of that, make them get to the left of you. The point of getting to the right was to be the first boat that has the right of way to put your bow closer to the mark.
Will you go over what blue's permitted to do?
So there's a couple things that blue's permitted to do in this situation, and this is what's important. So green's at the ley line, right? If blue's enough ahead of you that they can complete their tack and basically show their stern to you, outside of 2 boat lengths, as soon as they present their stern to you, you have to, head up, head down, don't hit them, right? So, and then they're fine. If they're outside of 2 boat lengths, or 3 boat lengths, 24 feet in the dive, it's not very far. Basically being down to the close haul course.
You just missed the best winter mark, idea ever.
So it basically, what I call it is presenting your stern. And I literally say that, like, so as you come in, if you're worried about a boat, turn fast and present your stern to them. If they rear end you, it's just like in a car, right? If you hit them like that on the side, then they haven't completed their tack. But if you hit them bow to stern, you could have just headed up and missed them. And
always,
in a dire, I mean,
hit
it's
someone's stern.
The problem is if you hit them on the side, yeah, they're wrong, but you just lost.
There's the rub, which is you just do never want to encourage a person to leave value. So we can generalize this down the course because this applies all over the race course, but it applies the biggest gains are at the winter mark. But this applies anytime you're on a favored tack and you're on starboard. You're going the way you want to go, and somebody's going to cross you on port, or they're not going to cross you on port. And the question is, if I want to keep going this way and this guy's not crossing me, what should I do? I shouldn't yell starboard because he's going to tack. He's going to tack right in front of me. He's going to go slow. We all know. There are very few people in this fleet that tack and come out of their tack going as fast as they were. And even then, they lose half a boat length before they get back up to speed. So almost always, if you're going the way you want to go on starboard and there's somebody in your way, just wave them across. Do a little duck and keep going the right direction. If you're pointed this way towards the mark and this boat's on port not pointed towards the mark, ducking, go 2 more boat lengths and your bow is that much closer to the mark than there. Like your VMG is so much better. So you'd rather duck, right? Because if the course is square, most likely the next shift's going to be this way and you're going to tack and you're going to be a boat length and a half ahead. So this applies everywhere. It applies, the biggest gains are at the winter mark, but pretty much everywhere. If you're on starboard and you're happy being on starboard, waving port tack boats across you is better than letting them leave out you, right?
Now, John, what should the port tacker do other than keep clear because he's port tack?
So
what should his plan be going in there? Just trying to come in and
so in general, if you're on port,
get in there?
in general, if you're on port and someone says cross,
Tack.
You want to tack?
No, you don't. No. Well, you think that, but the fact is no, you don't. Because what you're going to do, in general, if you tack, you're going to pinch and you're going to let all the other boats that are behind them catch up to you. So the better thing to do is cross. Yes, this boat will still be ahead of you, but you and that boat will be further ahead of the boats behind you. And in general, what happens is if you can't cross this boat, you're going to have to duck 2, 3, 4 boats to find the same kind of hole again. So if somebody's going to let you cross, take it, cross, go half a boat length, and tack here. And just say, okay, I'm going to go with this guy in the run, and hopefully we're going to go forward. If you're in first and second, I'm perfectly happy taking second place and extending this. If you're in fourth and fifth, right? Like you're just thinking this is a long race. The windward mark means we're no more than a quarter of the way done with the race ever in our races. So why not get as far away from the boats behind you and as close to the boats in front of you as possible? And the best way to do that, generally, if you're the port tack boat, is when someone tells you to cross, go ahead and cross. Now, down the beat further, if someone's telling you to cross, especially if I'm yelling at you to cross, I'd tack soon. Right, exactly. So, if you're down the beat, if you're right after the start, this is one of the things that happens a lot after the start. Boats are stacked up like this, right? The green boat has the blue boat totally pinned, and there's nothing the blue boat can do, but the blue boat's going slow and making the green boat go slow. So if we just take this out, 30 seconds later, it's going to be like that. That's not great for the green boat. It's terrible for the green boat, in fact, right? Especially if let's say there's another guy that's up here, who's now probably here. But we'll bring it back to the start, where they're like this. You're kind of stern to stern to stern like this. If you're this green boat right here, right, you can't tack because of this guy. The blue boat can probably cross this guy. Tell him to tack. Tack, go ahead, tack. Get out of here. Let him tack. Because boom, he tacks away. You do a little dip, so you're right behind this guy. He crosses here, but you and this guy now are, now you're clear, and a couple more boat lengths, you can tack, maybe go right behind this guy, and you're not that far behind, and you haven't lost anything. So whenever you can get your air clear, because that's one of the things that the gaps open up really fast in this fleet, because you're sitting right behind another boat, and generally it's like in this kind of a situation where a boat just to leeward and ahead of you is right here, and you're trapped by another boat. If one of the things that I make sure I never am, I'm never that guy. Like if I'm in this situation, I'll tack and duck the green boat just to get away. Because once I'm out here and no one's slowing me down, I can tack on my own shifts and I can do my own thing. But if you're in this situation, there's no way every single boat on the course is faster than you right now. And you wait 30 seconds. These races are only 8 minutes. That's like, 5% of the race gone if you wait 30 seconds in that thing. So 5% of the race, you're the slowest boat in the course. That's terrible. You can't be that guy. So, and basically by the time you get to the windward mark, the boats that have been going the fastest the whole time are going to be in the top 5. So if you're ever trapped in these situations, think about getting out. And if it's talking to this guy, can I tack, right? Can I get out? This guy, if a lot of times just pinch, try to get up in front of him, try to threaten him to go slow, even if you end up like here, you falling back. But then this guy decides to tack, and then you can tack with them, and you guys can go, and you can be clear. But don't do that where you can't hang.
If we go back to the mark on
Yeah.
that specific situation, so you got the boats coming in on starboard. You're coming in. You're a little bit ahead. You're on port tack. Not gonna be able to. You might clearly cross. Might not. Definitely could leap out and get on almost the same tack. But then you've got a boat just to leeward of you who clearly cannot cross. And this guy, it's not clear if he's going to take the stern or tack. What do you do as the?
So 2 things. In this situation, so this guy's an obstruction, right?
Correct.
Between these 2 boats, who hails first actually kind of matters. Okay? So if you're the blue boat, you either need to take control early and say, I need room to dock.
Right. Or, but if you don't want to dock, you can't yell that and then tack.
You can't yell that and then tack. So if your
So-
intention is to tack, then you keep your mouth shut until this guy tells you he wants
What
to
if he
tack,
has-
and then you tack
What if
immediately.
he tacks before he yells? Is he
So are
obligated
you
to have?
talking about
Yes,
like
he's
last week,
obligated
or
to.
last weekend?
Pardon?
Are you talking about last weekend?
He has to hail. You heard
He
that?
must hail.
He must
The
hail.
lured boat must hail. This is absolutely this is one of the few times instruction calls where you must hail. So
Before he crosses head to it.
the lured boat must hail for room
Port
to tack.
Green boat, the Port Green boat
Yep.
has to hail. And what is he saying?
He says room to tack.
I'm gonna to the blue
Room to
boat.
tack.
To the blue
Yep.
boat.
Yep. He doesn't have to dock. He can say this is instruction, room to tack. And as soon as he says room to tack, the blue boat either has to tack or say you tack. There's only two responses to a hail like that, which is you can either tack immediately or you say you tack. If you believe that like the guy's going to go a little further, you say you tack, and then you follow him and tack with him, right? But you need to do one or the
He
other.
might say tack, you tack, now he's got room.
If he does that, then he's foul.
Okay.
If you call for room to tack, you must tack
Immediately, right?
within a very reasonable amount of time, within 2 seconds. In a dire 1, 2, tack. So, in general, you basically, if you're the blue boat there, you tack. Or, if you're like, well, he's on the ley line, you're going to tack and trap yourself to leeward of him, there's no guys back here, I might say, tack, 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 and try to get behind him. I mean, I've done that before for sure, because then he's not going to make the mark, you're going to come up here, and you're going to tack, and he's going to be in port. This guy's going to have round it, and you're going to be right.
So same scenario, but similar. You're the weather boat on port, and you decide you want to duck, and you call for room from the leeward boat. What's the leeward boat's obligation?
To not hit you. So that's it.
They need to respond.
They just need to not hit you.
Lured boat's still the right-of-way boat.
Lured boat is right away boat. They need to give you room, right? So as soon as you're like there, they can basically start and take you head to wind again. Yep.
John, how about the one we both said so simultaneously? One guy said duck and the other guy said tack.
The lured boat's the right away boat. They get the guy who says room to tack has the right away. So the right away boat gets to decide, right?
So, but if he asks for room to duck, the other guy can't say, no, change it my mind.
Yes, you can. If the blue boat asks to dock, sorry, John.
So if the windward boat says room to dock and the lured boat goes no,
No, I
room
want
to tack, you have to tack. If there's still time. But it does, if you say room to dock and basically start ducking, then he's got to keep, as soon as you say room to dock, he's got to start keeping clear of you to make sure you can go behind the boat. So he can't go room to tack and turn over and hit you as soon as, like here you say room to dock and hit you, because that's not going to fly. You're the only one who's hailed in that situation, and you're going to be right. But it is a mandatory hail, and generally those things play out as the first person to hail is going to have the right of way. Not totally true if it's a simultaneous hail, the lured boat gets to call it because in theory, right, if you think about it, if it's far enough away that you're 2 boat lengths away, all the lured boat has to do, neither boat really needs room, all the lured boat needs to do is just luff you head to wind, and this boat's going to be gone before you guys get out of the luff. So as long as the lured boat is actually the right-of-way boat and has luffing rights, then they can pretty much do what they want if they're far enough from the obstruction to decide to go to leeward or go to windward or whatever.
Well, when do the luffing rights end?
They don't,
That's right. So nowadays, that's right. Today's rules.
as long as you're overlap, there's luffing rights. They end when the windward boat gets clear
Very
ahead.
still alive, yeah.
But you can't go past head to wind, because then you're attacking.
No, but if you get close to head to wind in the dire, you start going backwards in like a quarter of a boat. We all know that. There's no momentum, like especially if there's like one little tiny wave out there, you just stop really quickly. I mean, I don't know that Dyers glide a full boat length even headwind. Like, they really don't. But in bigger boats it matters, right? But you go slower, but not. In bigger boats in light air, you can go almost the same speed for 3 or 4 boat lengths. It's a little different.
Unless you have another idea, we seem to be having a lot of issues with when people are okay at the start with getting between a lowered boat and the committee and when they're not.
Okay.
It seems to be a recurring problem.
Yeah, we definitely talked about this one before. Okay.
Yeah, with our shack.
So we have a big shack, especially relative to our boats. It's about a boat length and a half wide, and it's about 2 boat lengths long. So this is about a boat length and a half, and this is about 2 boat lengths. It actually works pretty well with these little boats, so I'll take them out.
Use one of the rule books as a.
Big wind shack.
Because you
There,
get-
actually, yeah, that's the shack.
That's the-
Two tires on the next to that thing.
Yeah,
Pretty easy.
It also depends on the placement of the flag on the
Everyone.
shack.
even when you're finishing.
Yeah, so I'll use this as a general placement. Most often it's there.
Sometimes it's
Here,
Yeah.
but most often it's about there. It's about half a boat length from the back corner.
I gotta interrupt. All right, so that buoy up here, before
Nothing
the
to do
start,
with-
after the start, is that
nothing to
anchor
do.
line? All right.
Nothing to do with anything.
the tackle and you can hit it.
So
You can
it's
hit it. You can go between that and the float.
And you hit it, it's not hitting the committee boat.
Right.
Anchor
Oh,
line.
okay.
Yeah,
It's smart.
It's just tackle.
Anchor line, tackles not.
Not part of the mark. And neither the buoy isn't part of the mark.
No, you can totally go in
But if it's windy, you'll get caught.
If you pull your centerboard up and heel over a little bit, you go right over it. If it's windy, right? If it's windy and it's really taut, you can kind of get caught there. But
Light air, you have no problem.
I've got plenty of chunks out of my rudder from that. Makes it faster.
there. Sure, but.
So Tom Ross is luffing right at the corner
Oh.
of the table.
And I say, Will, you can't go in there.
So whoever is luffing right there, because this is basically what happens. And
I was hanging there, Will was coming in.
Will.
From behind.
and generally boats are coming in, and you know what's happening. This boat's stopped, right? So they've stopped. They're here. They're hanging out here.
They?
Stick turret.
Whoever it is. It isn't always Tom.
I
Do the
was
same thing.
stopped, I was.
Yeah, all right, I do.
So we're going really
Going
slow.
Going
We're
slow.
going slow.
Waiting.
So there's 2 scenarios here, right? So the blue boat, we'll take this boat out right now. The blue boat comes in fast and they're moving, and they're like, I got 10 seconds. Boom, I can go around them. So like get from here to there. They get to here and they create an overlap. Now they are now the right-of-way boat. They're the leeward boat. What they don't have is they don't have luffing rights. They came from astern. So they can't take Tom above his proper course. But what's proper course before the start? There isn't one. So basically, they do have luffing rights. I mean, basically. However, they came from astern, so they need to give Tom, they created this boat by the interpretation of the rules, an action of this boat put them as a right-of-way boat. So they do need to give Tom the opportunity to keep clear. Tom can't keep clear in this direction. He's been here, and this shack is an obstruction. It's on our boats, because the committee boat is so big relative to the size of our boat, there's no way you can go. So as this boat goes to leeward of him, he's not only got to clear his boat, he's got to clear the end of his boom with his side stay, right? Now, what can't happen is, can't let your sail out as the boat's going to leeward of you and go like, I'm going to slow down now.
I would never do that to Will.
No.
But if your sails are out and you're there, and this boat needs to go around that, come around you, still has luffing rights, However, at this point, does need to give this boat, who is clear ahead, room to fit between them and the float. Okay? They cannot create it so that this boat cannot go between them and the float. They came from astern when this boat was already overlapped with the boat. Contrast. 2 boats. This boat's slightly ahead of this boat, but they are even, and they are definitely overlapped. Especially, this happens a lot. Guys coming in. Anybody who comes in from up here, Jeff, Me too, I do this a lot.
Sorry.
Comes in. Remember that overlap is created by the parallel from the transom. So basically everybody over this way is overlapped. Everybody's overlapped with green boat. Comes in, green boat comes up, you know, you're kind of here, and then I'm going to slow way down. Right? But if this boat's consistently overlapped, this boat has been overlapped with this boat the whole time. They do not need to give them any room. Even if this boat then goes between the two boats, even if he gives them room and lets them in there, as the gun goes off, or as it's 5 seconds and this boat hardens up, he can drive them right into the bottom of the boat, back of the thing. They had luffing rights the whole time. This boat knows a boat that has luffing rights with me is overlapped outside me, and I'm taking the risk of putting myself between them. Now,
And it doesn't matter if you
What if they came around?
it doesn't matter. But what happens a lot, even more often maybe, and this is why Jeff's right a lot of the times when he does this, and we all do this too, is you're coming down and you're clearly overlapped, right? But right here at 5 seconds, boom, no overlap. I've broken it for 1 second. Now, as I bear away, I've gotten between here, and now Jeff's gotten his bow down again. This boat creates an overlap, but this boat was the one that created the overlap now. They came from astern. Now they can't, even though they're still going faster, they can't cut them off. So if you're this guy down here, it's very important that you keep track of all the boats that you are overlapped with as they get between you, and this is a very important line, right? So as they pass this line here, if you create the overlap before they cross that line, like this boat has no rights. They have to bail out before they get there. If their bow's here and you create the overlap now, they can't bail out. The obstruction is there.
So what if they have no headway?
If they have no headway, you've got to go
Right,
to
so
lure
they
them
have no
and go around it.
maneuver and keep clear.
Yep. And in general, if you're this guy, you're making this decision, and so this is one thing you've got to make a decision on. You've got to decide whether you'd rather start to leeward in ahead of this person or to windward in behind. And you got to make that decision and just be clear about it in your mind and get to that spot. So if you're going to try to start to leeward in ahead, don't worry about being so close to the boat. Just commit to going to leeward of them. Pretend you're going to shut him out, but then at 5 seconds, get your bow down and get down the line and start to leeward in ahead. And if you're going to start to windward in behind, pretend you're going to go to leeward of him so that he has to defend a little bit, get him down the line, and then start to windward in behind it. The whole thing actually comes back to what we were talking about before, which is the key is that you don't want anybody within the 2 bow lengths to windward and to ahead and to leeward of your bow.
So anyone bearing off around the windward side of the committee float,
Coming down this way.
It's never really.
the windward side, thinking they're going to tip the line and start, they clearly.
Coming down this way.
The Jeff start.
I do that too.
I do that sometimes.
I usually do it at the pin, but I do it for you too.
If the pin is on the forward part of the
If
shaft,
it's here, a lot of times you can come downwind and turn and go in
nobody
here.
can.
I've done it down in here,
Right.
and Mikey was coming up on starboard and went head to wind right at me, and I'm like, oh crap, I definitely fouled now, because like now I'm on port, coming dead downwind at him. Like, you're screwed. But
Yeah, you have no, and once the gun goes off, you have
no
absolutely
rights. You're basically no rights. Yes. And I've
So the term
done
barging
circles there before.